Mr. Kellen Parrish, welcome to the show. Mr. Brett from Spearfactor, today's guest, Kellen Parrish. You might have heard him on the Noob Spearo podcast, and today we're going to talk to him about all kinds of stuff, including his little entrepreneur. I guess I don't know. I guess we all have kind of have that. I think there's something with spearfishing and people's. I don't know what it is because I went down this rabbit hole too. Spear fishermen, I would say more than most, like all we want to do is tinker with stuff and make it better. And I've done it. That's why it got me into building all my own guns, making all my own equipment, like the whole thing. And I always love when people do the same thing. Like I was working with my friend Robert, who does the Chimera side slip for a while, and like I kind of have the idea of whether you like a product or not, it's like you almost like kids, you got to encourage that mentality because you might have 5 things, 10 things that fail, but that's how we progress. So, Kellen, before we even get into what you're doing, let's find out who the heck Kellen Parrish is. So, would you like to introduce yourself? I would say this, give us your background, but like, let's go all the way back. Like how did you grow up? You said you grew up before I was recording. You said you grew up outside of Sacramento, like Auburn or like where?
Oh no, not that far out in Fair Oaks, Orangevale area. So like
Okay.
just down Highway 50. But yeah, we can go all the way back. Picture 1991. Mercy Hospital, Sacramento, California.
What
Screams echo out throughout. No, I'm just kidding.
the time of day? Was it
Yeah,
nighttime? When were you born?
it was nighttime. Yeah, I didn't give my parents the luxury of being able to do it during the day. No, So I was I was born. I'm from Sacramento. Like I tell people who aren't from California, I'm from Sacramento. I tell people, who are from California that I'm from, a little more precise. And then I tell people from Europe, I'm from San Francisco, because it just doesn't compute otherwise. um, so yeah, I grew up out that way. But I mean, I guess in terms of background, right now I've had kind of like a, zigzaggy career, but right now I'm working as a marine biologist. I'm a contractor for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration right now.
Oh,
And
okay. I'll
yeah,
pray for you. I'll pray for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, my wife works for the government too, and she
Okay.
just
Yeah.
put her retirement papers in. So yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
not a bad thing for us, but a lot of friends in the same situation where just cutting everything with a chainsaw, right?
Yeah, it's been hard to see. I mean, a lot of my colleagues have been like smart people who care a lot about the ocean. So yeah, not I don't want to turn this into anything remotely political, but man, I
No, it's all right.
yeah,
I mean,
it,
yeah, that's not really a political thing. It's just a fact, right? Like everybody that knows me knows where I stand on things, kind of in the middle, I guess. But like it is what it is. Well, how where'd you go to college at? You go to
yeah.
Davis or?
I did graduate school at Davis, so pretty normal like upbringing. Like in high school, I was 3-sport guy. Would dive every chance we got with my dad. He got me into apple diving when I was 11. Well, it started when I was 10, but the wetsuit was about 5 sizes too big. So throwing you out of the boat, like up out of Gualala, uh, a 10-year-old isn't going to, he's swimming in this wetsuit. It wasn't really going to pan out that year. But then we got me fitted the next year and, was able to be successful. But, it's like with anything, high school, your priorities change a little bit. You meet, you get into sports, girls, all that kind of stuff, the normal kid. And then I ended up at college at the California Maritime Academy out of Vallejo, actually. Um, Love that. They didn't have a marine biology or marine science major at the time. They got it like 2 years after I graduated. So that ended up being my minor. Um, and got a job, decided I did not want to work in the maritime industry and just hightailed it for the Peace Corps like the second I graduated. So I did 2 years in rural Guatemala, working out there, and that kind of shifted my life trajectory entirely. I got hooked up with a school down there that really wanted to do a tilapia farming program, and tilapia has become kind of a big aquaculture fish for like food security in the developing countries. So, they're like, hey, Kellen, like, do you know anything about aquaculture? Like, well, I have a minor in marine science, so no, but let's roll with it. So, I was like staying one Google ahead of the school students to like, figure out how to build a tilapia pond. Um,
Well,
realized, yeah, go ahead.
funny thing about that,
Yeah.
dude, because in my job we teach people too, and I always say you don't need to know everything. You just need to know just this much more than them, and just be one step ahead. So it's funny you said the exact same thing. I tell them that, and they're laughing. I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, I don't know everything, but I just got to know just this much more than you.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and it was great. It was the best experience of my life. Met my wife there, changed my life. Realized that what I thought my calling was, and realized I didn't know nearly enough about it. So then I ended up at graduate school at UC Davis, and there I actually studied aquaculture and international development. So that was kind of where I wanted to be. Spent some time while I was in school working in the aquaculture industry. So, but then also hitting spearfishing really hard the second I got back to the States. So I've was always interested in being the guy who also was totally fine with aquaculture, but also was like spearfishing on the weekends. That's those disciplines don't always mesh too well, so it ended in some educational conversations, some very confrontational conversations. But I think it's just one of those things. If I want to be around water, around these species, like uh, I'll just do whatever you can. And I tell the story that my boss at the farm who founded it, spends all day, every day with sturgeon, and then would just go fishing all weekend. So it's just they're kindred spirits. So that's what I appreciated about it. They just can't get enough of the marine biology life.
There's a lot there to unpack. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
amazing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I said I spent some time on, I call it the Antifa ship, and I told my wife it was a research ship, and I told my wife I really feel like I have been living in my own bubble with my own people, surrounded by my own people, and I'm shutting my mouth. I'm listening because I'm the new guy, and I'm listening, and I realize everyone's saying the same thing on opposing sides, and they're all saying the same thing about each other. And I was like, wait, so me being me, I was just kind of like, I could be the catalyst to like, hey guys, I like to spearfish and kill fish. And you would think like all eyes on. And I was like, but I love them and respect them at the same time. And some people just don't understand that.
Right.
It's wild. And I kind of understand it, but at the same time, I'm like, unless you're like a pure vegan, you really you got to see like where the respect. I think what it is the respect thing is key. Where I think people think that we just like this redneck dude that just shoots up the place and like all of that. And it's like I joked around where I was like we're all like tree huggers. Like more importantly than anything, like, we're like really tree huggers because like I think we spend more time not shooting anything than we do shoot. You know what I mean? So you put your time in, it's like I really care about this thing.
Well, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you get a full stringer of fish, on some days, but still the coolest thing I did was swim with that seal a while back, or, you're hunting out and it was like, well, we didn't limit, but a basking shark swam by. And that was probably the coolest thing. That was like a, an extra, what do you call it? Like seeing God in a lot of ways, it's just like, what? This thing's 35 feet long and it's in Oregon. It's just swimming by us. That's, it's, but I think I agree. There's a little bit of that, there's that political horseshoe theory too, where it's like you have the people that, the people that care the most really are the people kind of utilizing a resource in a lot of way. And I thought that you had somebody from Backcountry Hunters and Anglers on a little while back.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that there's that crossover now. And it sounds like you're starting it with the spearfishing realm because
Yeah.
there really are kindred spirits. I've, gotten into elk hunting in the last couple of years, which maybe that's an overstatement. I've gotten into walking around with my bow for 3 days at a time. Um,
Yeah.
but
Hiking with a bow. Yeah.
yeah, bow hiking, exactly.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, and I think that's there's a lot of common ground to be found between the kind of the hook and bullet and hike and bike crowd, and I think anyone who spends all their time at REI or all their time at Bass Pro Shops is completely missing like some really enriching experiences. So that's, I like you, I've tried to be that hybrid person. And I love when people can't get a read on me because it frustrates them, and it delights me because I know they're learning something.
Dude, it's so spot. I love it, man. I love I'm talking to you about this right now because, um, grow like working in the animal training industry. Most of the people like we do a lot of husbandry and care and a lot of bio, a lot of science, academia type stuff, and there's like two sides of it. There's like for us, it was like the guys that want to just dive and get in the water and play, they love the outdoors. And then we had the researchers kind of on this side. And we all loved the same things, but it's almost like we had totally different ways of expressing it.
Mhm.
And I think you said like once you take unveil the fact that like uh I'm not who you think I am and you're not who I think you are, then it was like then we sat down and had this conversation. Like on the ship, it was like interesting. Yeah, I feel this way. Like I pulled out I had one of my buddy, Cameron has tagged spear guns. I had a collapsible spear gun in my bag that I brought on the ship. And I was like, hey, like if we get a chance, we're in the Mar or the Marianas Islands. I'm like, we're gonna jump in and shoot some stuff, like have some dinner. And I was like, I tucked that thing so far away, I thought like people were gonna like basically I pulled out a machine gun. And then once we had conversations about at dinner, and just about climate change and everything, and it was like, yeah, and we like realized it was like, look, I'm not a professional. I don't have an opinion on some things because I don't know enough. I'll just tell you what I think from sticking my face in the water for the last 30 years. Like certain things I think work, certain things don't work. But I think if we can all put down our weapons and realize we all want the same thing. And I feel like you said, having those people on and talking with those is like, we're all sitting here arguing over the same thing. What it is we just have different ways that we think we either want to go about doing that change. But all in all, everybody wants the same. I mean, who wants to destroy the environment? Like, if you do, you're just an asshole, you know? So it's like, it's important to remember that when we chat about it. Like, I wanted to reach out to, the other, like the more groups, the nonprofit groups, and like reach out to them, but a lot of them didn't want. I think they were afraid to come on a spearfishing show, like it was a setup. And I don't. And I was just like, no, I'm. They're like, oh, we'd love to talk to you. And then the other thing was, I reached out to, was funny, fishermen, a group that had the fishermen's markets, like that ran the fishermen in Australia, this like huge fisherman market. I was like, I'd love to talk to you guys about, that whole process and stuff. And they're like, oh, unfortunately, we're not able to, because anything now is like, could be a remotely like political or something. I don't understand. I'm like, well, should we be talking? Because we're really good at one way talking, but we don't talk to each other.
Yeah. And it's probably not that individual who's responding to you. It's probably them thinking some very small percentage of their supporters are going to get really loud in the comments section. It's always like
Yeah.
worried about blowback. But it's a bummer too, because I think like what you found out on that ship, it sounds like it's kind of a false choice, right? Either or. No, it's like I think a lot of perspectives at the table are really going to bring about way better solutions. One, that help people, who want to continue to harvest their food that way, and two, people who really want to protect the environment. No one wants to see it go away more than Spearos. I mean, I don't know. There's some pretty bleeding heart sounding Spearos up my way who are pretty scared about the kelp forest situation and the urchin problem, man. And
Oh yeah.
they sound like, Greenpeace sometimes when they're talking about it. And that's cool. I mean, it's a really big problem. We need everyone around it, especially from like the citizen science end. Like I couldn't think of a more valuable group than the people out there involved in the resources and frankly tangled up in kelp.
Yeah. No, it's funny. You mentioned the kelp thing. We were going diving this weekend, and this guy's like, you guys going to go shoot some sheep's head? And, he was like he was an older guy, obviously grew up at the beach his whole life. And I was like, no, we really don't shoot those. And my buddy's like, no, we really don't shoot those. He's like, why not? They taste great. Like, didn't understand it. And I was like, because they're good for and like, once you just explain, like, because they eat the urchins eat the kelp. Like, so we just kind of lay off them, and we're just kind of looking for this or this. And he's like, oh, like, I had no idea. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's why. But it's funny just how many people don't realize that connect that how I feel like as spirit, we're so connected to everything because we're just watching all the time. And then even like with science, like this is why I have so much respect for like my friend. I've said this so many times. My buddy who's a professor, he's also an avid spearfisherman, but he's a biology professor. But it's like, dude, you can kind of combine the two, your knowledge of how things work, and then also it makes you a really good hunter because you can like predict, okay, chlorophyll comes, okay, certain fish, and then the whole chain of events and how that works, or bad visibility in certain fish, or whatever it is, like oxygen content in the water. They need that, so all these things that like you're you end up reading from the same book as every other scientist out there, and you're like, well, we're so different. It's like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
not really. I mean, yeah, it's funny.
We rip. I mean, I was working on our company business plan the other day, and I just shamelessly ripped off Nike's kind of everyone's an athlete thing. I just put
Nice.
everyone's a scientist, and I think I told this to Shrek the other day, but I don't know a Spiro who doesn't see like a full belly on like a link cod that they shoot or something like that, and want to see what's in that thing, and that's just a data point. Like everyone is, everyone's a scientist in this stuff. They just aren't title bat, but I think, if you were to have that title thrust upon you by someone, it's like, oh, you feel the gravity of what you're doing. You're really involved in this is natural resource management and the selectivity of Spiros, like what you're doing with the sheep's head. That's marine resource management. I mean, that's like applied biology and applied thinking about it. That's really cool. And it's not necessarily illegal to shoot them, right? It's just,
Yeah, no.
it's a self-imposed cultural. I mean, that's when it's really taken hold too, when they didn't even have to make a law about it, and you're already
Yeah.
behaving that way. That's super cool. I love that.
Some people, and some people, they're still, I guess, I feel like when you've been spearfishing so long, there's like this natural maturity that kind of, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's this like weird, but like I've shot so many yellowtail, and I have yellowtail in the freezer. Do I really need to plug another 20-pound yellowtail? Um, maybe I'll leave that for somebody else or whatever. If I have fish in the freezer, I'm just going to be super selective and look for that one guy. And then it kind of goes into like when you're young, it's like you're shooting everything that moves to get that. Oh, okay, cool. Then you get selective of like you have your hit list. Then you out of your hit list, you have size limits sometimes. Then you start trophy hunting kind of like, and then after that, I think the final level is just filming and like creating. That's what I see from a lot of older people. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but um I do know that there are times when it is nice to swim and like you said, like swim with a basking shark, just a film to appreciate like, wow, like here I am. Yeah, it's awesome. Like I did it with my wife on our anniversary, like with whale sharks, and it was like, oh man, I'm here with my wife. I'm not even spearfish. This is amazing. Right. I've been to places in the world where it's like you don't even have a spear gun and you get in the water and it's just the most coolest shit ever.
Oh, for sure. Where'd you do the whale sharks? Just out of curiosity.
A bit down in Bay of LA, place I've
Okay.
been several times, but I'd
Sweet.
never been down there to look at whale sharks. Was always spearing or around there. And my wife and I went and I was like, yeah, it's just, and for her to like do that so close to our house, it was just like, man, it just the ocean is incredible. And
It
it's really cool
really
to
is.
see the people down there taking that shit so seriously because they were like, they see their money. You're building in, we could talk about this too. And I'll shut up because I'm taking your time. We're putting in natural, like, substitute, I guess, like economies or, the word escapes me now, but where fishing can be replaced, commercial fishing not like, but fishing can be replaced with tourism that provides money, but they still got to get their food. So they're still fishing, but maybe not on the magnitude that they are, with gill nets and all that stuff. So, and then the guys are like, do not touch those things, and I'm like, got it. Even though I know a lot of people just don't care, but the fact that they actually said it and we're in Mexico, like they usually don't give a crap about too much, but like they're on it. And I was like, I respect that. That's awesome. We're moving in the positive direction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, we did the same thing down in Baja with the whale sharks, and I mean, it was like swimming next to a school bus. I mean, but you're absolutely right, and I think if you can diversify your economy and have ecotourism be a really big part of it, you get that protection. And yeah, you do. You get a little bit, you can conceivably have less fishing pressure because you're not wholly dependent on that. I think that's great. I really don't. And I've really had my attitude changed in the past couple of years about like sustainable tourism in a sense. Like I think that is like an integral part of economies that really does a good job for people and provides kind of cool, stable, steady work. And you're not all hunting, not all hunting for the same species. Like, I mean, like the Totoaba in Mexico still getting hammered pretty bad. And there's,
Cartel. A lot of it's smuggling, and then so the Chinese. I don't know how much you know about. I'm sure you know a lot, but it's like Chinese. A lot of the lobster, all the lobster there, everything gets shipped over to China, which whatever. It's crazy, but there's this whole underground market of the Totowa, like of gill netting, getting it, and all that. And it's not for the local sustainable harvest.
right. I mean, there's probably a, man, this is probably too speculative, but the any kind of like like excessive fishing pressure that you see kind of on the West Coast and maybe in like Central Latin America might have to do with, demands from like kind of some East Asian countries sometimes. So it's like, it's because it's just like the amount of seafood in their diet is just, beyond what they can produce, domestically. I mean, that's why I think you're starting to see trawlers from Chinese trawlers kind of inching closer to South America recently in a news report as well. So it's like, yeah, the geopolitics of it get real hairy real quick, don't they?
Right, and there's a lot at stake too, a lot of money. I've heard rumors that they have the biosphere protection stuff in Guadalupe Island down there with the sharks, and I heard really what happens is, and I can't confirm it. These are rumors from local fishermen here, and you know how that goes. But they heard like at night the Chinese boats turn off their AIS, come in, fish the waters because they're full of tuna, and then harvest and then bounce. But I know personally a police, not a policeman, but I guess a federal guy that they're out there all the time, and that's their job is to patrol that whole area. And he doesn't speak English, but I have a buddy of mine that translates for us. But yeah, he told me they're out there all the time. I mean, they're out there. They seem to be taking it seriously. But then I heard that, and I was like, well, who knows what the truth is? Maybe there's a little bit of both things going on. Um,
Yeah.
but so you were down in Latin America. You spent 2 years down there in the Peace Corps.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it
That's
was
incredible.
I loved it. It was the greatest experience of my life. It changed everything. I mean, I didn't do as much diving. There's one big caldera lake out there that I did some like kind of, let's call it half-ass free diving, but really just snorkeling in. Um, and it's just a great country. I mean, I think anytime you want to, I don't know. For me, service is service, and that was something that I just, wear very proudly on having done that for 2 years. And I think I made an impact on my community. I was sick the entire time, but it's just the food safety thing got me a little bit. So it's like I think I lost like 35 pounds, like within 6 months of being there. It's one of those things. I mean, it's a bit of a tangent, but like, unfortunately, guys eat a little bit more. So just the probability that you're eventually going to get sick just happens constantly. My best friend there and he was my wedding officiant. We were just like, oh, like, every weekend, like, what do you get? I was like, I think it's, Giardia this time. Great. Okay, cool. Like, sorry, didn't mean it. Didn't think Giardia would come up on the podcast. But anyway, so yeah, I did.
So you really don't know Giardia. I know a little bit about it. Well, everybody knows I guess that knows what it is. We don't have to get into it, but good Lord, man. Does the Peace Corps, do they do like two-year contract? Is that how that works? And you
yeah, it's a 2-year contract. You can extend for a third year. Some people do that. A lot of people don't. It's kind of just like a 2-year commitment. It's a lot too. It's not, in a sense that you're kind of just dropped into your community. It's not like there's a ton of going back and forth. There's no headquarters. You just live out kind of where you're living for 2 years. And you travel around sometimes, but most of the time you're just in your site, just kind of integrating into the community, doing your job, Sometimes your job completely falls apart with political changes, which mine did, or just some kind of personnel switches that you end up having to find other stuff. It's kind of great because it's like a crash course in having to be useful. It's like you spend the first few months going, all right, what is this community? What was I assigned to do? Well, how does that dovetail with what the community needs? And what am I capable of? And wherever that Venn diagram overlaps is what you really focus on for 2 years.
Is it a federal government or agency?
It's an independent federal agency. Yeah, exactly. So you apply, takes forever, with most federal background checks. And then they send you for 2 years and you make, I think I was making like $380 a month for 2 years, the equivalent, which is, it's fine in those areas. You make the equivalent of like whatever your professional counterpart is. And it was just an absolutely tremendous experience. And, changed how I view natural resources, how I view food security. It really, gave me a hard shove into how I feel about like eating animals too. I mean, in a sense that it's something that I think is, a luxury to decide not to do, to be perfectly honest. So it just changed kind of my whole outlook, and it made me want to think about food security and like, helping people who don't have enough get more food, and Guatemala is one of the most malnourished countries like in the Americas, in terms of chronic malnourishment, which is like stunting over time. So it's just, it was a huge eye opener. And, but I always wanted to kind of go back and figure out, all right, I'm really interested in marine biology. How do I merge those two? And then, so aquaculture, international development, fisheries is exactly where I landed.
What would you say, like, how would you describe Guatemala, like, differently compared to, because it's surrounded by other, I mean, what's it bordered by? El Salvador or Nicaragua?
It's bordered by, Belize up top.
Okay.
Mexico directly north, Honduras on the south side. And oh my gosh, this is embarrassing, but I don't know. I can't remember if it touches El Salvador. I don't have the map off the back of my head. But at least those three countries, at least Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador. Yeah.
How's it different? Because I've heard it's like economically vastly different than those other surrounding. It's the least economical or the most industrialized. It's either the most industrial or the least industrialized, I thought.
It's kind of like yes and no in a lot of ways. It really depends. I mean, it's got the largest population in Central America, so it does have that going for it. It's a fascinating country in that, along with Guatemala or along with Peru and Bolivia, it has an incredibly high percentage of its population that would still identify as indigenous. So these would be like different Mayan groups, but within that, there's like 24 different ethnicities. Guatemala has maintained, I think a little under half its population still are very much like tied to like, ancient civilizations. So that, I mean, culturally, that kind of just sets the whole country up differently. Belize is English speaking, which is a whole other, interesting part of it. But then in southern Belize, you have those same Mayan communities. So they don't, the border means a little bit less to them. But you'd see, I think that's what sets it up. I mean, it's got incredibly diverse kind of ecoregions too. So it has this like northwestern section, which is called the dry corridor, which is just in this really rough perpetual drought. But then it has kind of the northeastern part, which is the really big part that borders Mexico, is one of the most northern kind of tropical forests, which is where all the ruins are. So you go north into Mexico, Chichen Itza, it's called Tikal in Guatemala. And then I lived in the highlands. So I was in like the most dense part of, we call it like indigenous Guatemala. So I lived in a department called El Quiche, which dates back to the original kind of like Quiche Empire in Guatemala. So I was in the highlands. I had a 1 foot deep river running through my city, or the town I lived in. And I'd say in terms of how it differs, I mean, the indigenous culture, but I'd say southern Mexico, like Chiapas, that area, has a lot in common with Guatemala. Like regionally and culturally, that's really similar. Northern Mexico, you start to see a lot of differences, but I'd say southern Mexico, Guatemala, a lot less industrialized in northern Mexico, a lot more agricultural. I mean, pretty much dependent on agriculture at that point in time. Just like a completely different culture, different entirely. I've never been to El Salvador, but then Honduras is also, just got its own thing going on. I think it's like for me, it's like the kind of bean that they eat typically differs, and that's kind of what like Guatemala is like a staunchly black bean country, so ended up eating a lot of that and learn how to cook it. It's just yeah. So that's I guess I'd say how it differs. There's 23 languages or 24 languages in addition to Spanish spoken.
Wow.
So like a lot of the people I worked with were second language Spanish learners like me. So it was really nice. We were learning Spanish at the same time, but they spoke a language called Sacapultec, and I spoke English. So I had to learn little bit of that. And it was wild. It was a really, really great, amazing time in life.
Did you when you joined the Peace Corps, um did you have like a list, did they give you, here's your options of where you can go?
You can now. So now you can apply kind of like how college, you can apply to a specific major at a specific university, which impacts certain programs. Like everybody wants to do coral restoration in the Philippines. But public health work in Guatemala wasn't always the sexiest sounding thing. So when I applied, I didn't have the option. They said, where do you want to go? And I'm like, well, Micronesia, because I heard the volunteers spearfish there. Or then the other preference was Mongolia, because I thought it'd be fun to be semi-nomadic and can literally move my house every day.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
And then they found out I took advanced Spanish in college, and were like, boom, Central America. And that was because that was the only language requirement. So I spoke decent Spanish, and they were like, all right, get out of here, go over there. So I'm kind of happy I didn't get to choose. It's a good time when you're 22. It's a really good time in your life to not get your way and then just be thrown into something. And
that's great. And I also think it's great too to it forces you out of that comfort zone, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
So like you said, like I always say, like you learn so much just by staying around what you normally do. Like whatever, you just go somewhere and like, oh, it's a whole different perspective of things in life that I saw, especially when you're a young man or woman, and you see like, oh, I didn't even consider this because I didn't even know it existed.
Right. And how wrong I was about things for a lot of the time, and how much, frankly, better people were than I was. Just an unselfish population of people who are doing a lot more with what they have than I have with all the abundant resources I had growing up in California. It shifts your perspective, and it's probably why I ended up being such a DIYer, to be honest. You end up, I'd like a hammer and some nails to put my life together there.
Yeah, it's true though. It's like, I watched something the other day with Ollie Craig, like they're making bows out of a piece of bark and it works, and they're just shooting, and you're like, you see all these indigenous people and you're like even just in spearfishing, a friend, like the guy spearfishing with a chain with a shackle as his weight belt, right? Like in Micronesia, and they're like, they just don't have that stuff. They're like, what we need, my buddy was said, like what we need and what we think we need are two different things. One's driven by need, the other one's driven by money, like an economy. Like we don't, he's like, I'm like, that's a good point. I mean, when we were a kid, I was still managing to spearfish before I had carbons, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so, yeah, it makes it nice, but it's not a need per se.
I think every young kid getting into spearfishing should have to do what I did. I think you should have to wear your dad's old wetsuit or your mom's old wetsuit. Like, I do not think you should get open cell to start off. I know it sounds like I have this weird thing that the movie Jaws, right? It was one of my favorites growing up. I didn't know that was an old movie because my gear looked just like Hooper's. Because I just had my dad's wetsuit from like 1970 something that I was diving in. I just assumed that's what gear looked like for most of my teen years. So it's kind of like, and then I really appreciate an open cell wetsuit and long fins and all that kind of stuff. But the learning what you can do just without all that gear makes it much more useful when you end up getting it too.
I was going to say, because the other thing is it's easy to go back. Like,
oh yeah,
my dad and mom, they, dove in the 70s, and they had all their books that I saw growing up was like their Patty book, not even those Patty back then, but like now or whatever.
Yeah.
It was all these guys dressed just like that, Jacques Cousteau looking stuff. So it was like, oh, okay. And jet fins or whatever. And it was like, all right, cool. And then you start getting all this Gucci stuff, and you do appreciate it way more. But then also when you go back to other stuff, you're like, oh yeah, okay, well that's all right. I know how to deal with this. It just makes you a better all around diver. And then I don't know, it keeps you humble too. So you're not like, oh, you don't have this. Yeah, well, these
Yeah.
things cost a lot of money, and not everybody has those things like available.
Right. And that's why, I'm such a, I think there's things from like a safety standpoint. If someone wants to go out, I'm like, let me rent you some long fins, but if they're in a surf wetsuit and have big goggles, like let's kick around, like that's fine. I'm not going to
Yeah, let
force
me know
you
when you
to.
get cold, and we'll go in.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm someone who, and I'm working towards the instructor certification, but to be honest, I get so much more joy out of taking people from 0 to 1 in this. I'd rather just see everyone get wet in the water. Um, right. Don't clip that before I said in the water.
No, no,
But
you're good. As as long as the other thing is, as long as they know they're a zero, there's nothing worse than someone that doesn't know they're a zero, and then you're not prepared for that. Then they get in the water and they freak out, and you're like,
right.
oh man, like we just tried to go too far, too fast. Let me just back this up.
Yeah, that's the yeah, I mean I think there was the term Jerry comes up that happens. So it's like someone who kind of overinvests in their gear well beyond their skill set. So to you they look like, uh-oh, what are you the real deal? You want to come out? Oh no, you had a panic attack. Like now I gotta like direct you in. So there's sometimes there's that. But yeah, it is good to to see someone swim in a pool at least or kind of paddle around to understand like, oh, those are some pretty quick kicks. I don't know how relaxed you look.
So, did you get a
Yeah.
chance to dive at all, like just snorkel at all in Guadalupe or I'm sorry, yeah, in Guadalajara? Or geez, I'm sorry,
La
it's
Paz?
gonna yell pause.
Yeah, we did a snorkel tour with the whale sharks. And then we went to check out the sea lions out there. Have you seen that? That we got a kick out of that where they kind of hold their fins up like solar panels because
Yeah.
they don't get enough body fat from the fish they're eating. I thought that was hilarious. And my wife and I still do that to each other. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, look, it's warm out. Yeah, we did a little bit of that. We did some kind of just self excursions and paddling around out there and kicking around. I do want to go back. I mean, I don't know if there's any Spiro who hasn't thought about, man, I'd like to buy a second home in La Paz. To get back out there from time to time. But we go to Mexico yearly. At this point in time, my wife used to live there. She works in public health, so she used to do some work, kind of in the rural areas there. And yeah, well, we just had our first kid, so we're travel's a little bit more difficult right now, but we will be back out there. And yeah, we'll probably do some spearfishing next time we get to La Paz. I have a place I go. I don't want to burn it. It's in the state of Oaxaca. So I'll only do that, but there's some good spearing. There's some really good people out there. Mexico's getting real popular. Not that it already wasn't, but the spots that remain, I don't want to, blow it
Understand.
out too
Who's
bad
that?
with those
How many?
gringos. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like 5 people that listen, so, to be honest, yeah, we don't like no, I'm just joking. We don't wanna, yeah, understand. Um, so do you go down is that the area you typically go when you go down there every year you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, sometimes we pick a different spot. So, I mean, I grew up with my dad driving us to like Tijuana back when that was a totally doable thing. So I've been all over northern Mexico, and like kind of the northern, like parts of the northern Sea of Cortez. And I grew up like for me, I read all the Steinbeck, like Log from the Sea of Cortez is my favorite book. So I just like always would, think about that going down there. We've branched out since then, kind of more mainland trips. We just did, Puerto Vallarta this last year, but that was
Love that.
second. Oh, it's really great. But it just helps. It helps. It feels like a second home to us, Latin America, really. My wife's family's from Peru. I've lived in Guatemala. We're in Mexico a lot. It's just kind of one of those like I really feel like a part of the world down there that it's not a terribly difficult way to get around. It makes it a little more accessible, I think, when you want to kind of navigate the sport fishing kind of industry, because I do insist on making sure I've compensated someone out there, at least for me, just because like it's they don't really have the same fishing license structure, so I want to make sure someone's compensated for the the Mexican fish I'm catching, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody could not fall in love with that culture. I was just at lunch with my buddy, and he happens to be Mexican, and I just told him it's gotten worse as I've gotten older, where I'm just like, I just want to go hang out down in Mexico. Everything is so laid back. Everybody's so friendly. People have little, and yet it's the honor system when you're paying for stuff. It's just like nobody, I don't even speak the language very well at all, but it's just something about it's incredible. And like you said, I think you bring up a good point. I have an inflatable boat and I go down there, and we always have a rule that locals are getting paid, like somehow, because you're using their resources. You're going to their backyard, especially like sometimes we'll use a Ponga guy like 50% of the time or whatever it is. Uh, or, just to make sure like, hey, they get their cut. Cause they kind of should. It's just that respect thing. I think you learn that when you travel like you did. And you kind of just find yourself looking at things so differently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it goes a long way.
Yeah, and you're, if you want to get, really, meta about it, you're in someone else's exclusive economic zone, kind of thing like
Yeah.
that. Those are Mexican fisheries, like recreational or commercial. It's there. I would, if someone came here to the States, like, yeah, we'll get you a fishing license and I'll take you out. It'll be great, but let's make sure, go do it by the book and kind of the way, and if they don't have a book, make sure we kind of exerting that cultural pressure. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it sounds like I admire the way you think about this stuff because, after what you told me about the sheep's head and now, you're making sure people are getting paid. I mean, it's just a real,
Well,
I don't
it's
know.
funny.
You seem like a great ambassador for the sport, man.
Oh, let's not get crazy here. But, uh, I try, right? I think everybody can try. Just be aware of it. I think anything in life, if you just flip it. Like,
Right.
for example, we go to the Coronados here all the time and fish. The Mexican government has made it more difficult, more expensive to do that. Everybody's bitching about it. I go, if we flip that and we move those islands here, and we had Mexican fishermen coming here, every one of you would be saying, yeah, charge them, charge them, charge them. Every one of you. So like, it is what it is, because the idea is their number one priority should be their resources.
Right.
And you want that. Like, just like we want our number one priority to be our resources. Like, you know, um, I think that's just my thing. Like, so it definitely does, like, but at the same time, when you go places, there are certain people that when you go places, and everybody knows these people, you go places, they're like, Aloha's dead. Um, yeah, these guys are jerks or this or that, or they have problems. I'm like, I've never had these problems. Like, I really haven't. Like, I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. There's certain situations that are just, you're going to have petty crime. Anywhere there's poverty, you're going to have the same thing you would have in National City if you go to a bad area, you know? So yeah, that's going to happen. But as a whole, man, if you just come with respect and humbleness and try to be fair and, appreciate and take 2 seconds to listen, that goes a long way. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it gets keep you from getting, it's the difference between getting all beat up or getting some pretty sweet, access to something you never knew was there in the first place. And,
Yeah, it goes back to like, oh, you want to win the battle or win the war? Like, yeah, I could probably kick your ass, but that's not going to win. That's not going to end up going eventually. Like, yeah, I've had this conversation numerous times. Like, oh, you should just kick his ass. Why? Then I'll never be able to surf there again. I'll never be able to go there again. I'll never be able to park my car and have my car broken into. Like, why? And if I'm that guy, maybe I'm tired of people coming here and doing that. So maybe I'll just take this one on the chin, and then the doors will be open when I show up. Um, yeah, I had this conversation surfing. This happens a lot, right? Like, the guys you go to a certain place, I'm not gonna mention any names, you go to a certain place and it's not here, but they'll like tell you, I don't know who you are. Get the fuck out of here. And you're like, okay, cool. So you gotta turn around and paddle in. Hey, sorry, yeah, no problem. Never no disrespect. The next time you come out there, my buddy told me this, and it's true. The next time you come out, they're like, hey, hi, how are you? My name's so and so. They just want to know that you respect them and their nobody owns it, but really when you think about it, like, oh, nobody owns it. I'm like, their culture has been here for 2,000 years, thousands of years.
yeah,
I'd say they own it, like,
that's ownership.
more than me, so it's like they just want to make sure that you respect that whole thing. And if you do, I never have problems. Like, it's fine, you know? So I think that's always an important thing. But we're going we're going down a rabbit hole here.
But
Yeah,
it's interesting though,
spent
dude. This is cool.
45 minutes and we haven't talked about really spearfishing. Sorry.
Okay. No worries. No, no, it's cool. I like interesting people. This happens all the time. But all right. Well, let's lock
Unless we
in.
could talk about spearfishing. So people I'm listening are probably like, okay, fast forward. Anyways, um, when did you kind of like, obviously, like a lot of us, right? You fall out of it just because you get busy with life. You get back into, you said you moved back to the States and you're like, I want to go. Um, was that something, and you grew up in an area where you're diving and it's not beautiful. I mean, it can be beautiful, but it's like not, it's pretty rugged. It's pretty
Oh
tough.
yeah. I didn't know what good visibility was until like, I would think we went on like a family vacation to, I guess the first time I went to Cabo San Lucas, like way when I was like 14. I was like, wait, this is water looks like this? What are you guys talking about? Like I did my scuba certification in a lake in Sacramento. I sat on a parking lot, you know, reading the little sketch pad from the guy like that had flooded. Um, yeah, it wasn't pretty, but it was just something again, it's kind of one of those things. I love talking about this too, but it was, I'd seen my dad do it. We've been camping every year my whole life growing up. Back when, you could take abalone back in the 90s. And I just had wanted to go out and I wasn't successful the first year that he will let me go in the boat. Felt like 10 was like a good threshold for me to like actually get in the water. Maybe it was earlier than some, but it was good for our family. But then when you hit 11, and then you're able to do it, it's kind of like that first, I was in the 6th grade. It's like the first little like rite of passage. I talked to Shrek about this. He really liked it too. Because I think anyone who has kids like wants to think about these things and we don't have like a set one in our culture. Uh, but that's what it was. I pulled my first abalone. My dad was elated and really, maybe a little over surprised. I didn't think he knew he didn't think I could do it. I was overweighted, under suited, a million different things. I had, fins that were falling off of me, but it was like, that's how you just get hooked. And I think that was kind of set, one, even if you're like a kid who doesn't have a lot of, because 11's right before teenage years and you're kind of a kid who's a little bit, pretty just tall and gawky and a little shy, but I could kind of retreat to this thing that I knew was like, I could get abalone. Like in a pinch, I could feed myself from the water and there's sharks out there. Like that was something I was like, I could really hold on to. And, I think maybe the self-esteem talks a little, there's a lot of it these days, but that was one thing you can kind of retreat into because it was like this thing I knew I had, that I could share.
Yeah, you got to find your win, right? You got to
Right.
just take that and to run with it because maybe you are like, what are you good at? Okay,
Right.
well, use that when you're a kid, but the things you're bad at, still work on those. But like, I coach football, so I'm like
Mhm.
all about this shit. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
find what you're good at and use that to propel you through the things that you're not good at. Like, focus on that. That's your worth. Okay, that's something you're good at. That gives you value. Fine, but use it to like propel you through the shit that's hard. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it works too. And, the added benefit is it's pretty cool to be a 15-year-old guy showing up to your prom date's house with abalone to impress your parents. I really hope that fishery comes back because I want that, that rite of passage. I really want to come back for young kids. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's how I got into it. I got hooked on it that way. And so I kept doing it in college with my dad. I had a vegetarian streak too, just because I think when you're learning things academically, and you kind of alluded to this with your time on the boat, you get into a bubble, right? So, in any 101 class you kind of come out of in college about marine resource management, before you learn the math and like the bigger picture, you're like, oh man, I shouldn't eat anything from the ocean. Like this thing's empty. Like we emptied it out. What are we gonna do? Like I should go vegan. So I had this kind of moment where I was a little shaken up about like just kind of like paralyzed by how much information I was taking in. And I really didn't want to do something wrong or cause harm. So I kind of had a little bit of a vegetarian streak. And then I got over that pretty quick. You know, like my dad called. He's like, "You sure you don't want to come diving?" I'm like, all right, I'm coming. Sure. Pick me up. It's fine. We'll go
That's
to the beach.
great.
So, but then, it kind of allows you to think a little bit harder about it. Like you're taking a life when you're doing that. The gravity's obviously harder when there's like a mammal you're shooting, but it's still a life, you know. And I think as long as it's not like you talked about, kind of when you're younger, you're shooting everything, but you kind of gravitate out of that like youthful. It's not bloodlust, but like that kind of just like
Yeah.
scarcity mentality. Like I gotta get more and more and more and more and more. But then every time you shoot something, you're like, okay, well, that's that thing's dead. I think that's one of the things with spearfishing because we love to talk about how selective it is, and it is very selective. It is also fatal. It's not like there's no release unless you're really bad or hit it real. There's no release in spearfishing. So that thing's either you ended it there or you hit it in a way that's gonna end it and slipped off your flopper, and something else is gonna take it pretty quick here. So just understanding like that thing, it's pretty zero sum when you hit something. Um, so understanding that at a younger age, and I think I was happy that I studied something like marine resources and fisheries and marine biology early on, because I'm like, oh man, there's a conservation side to this, and I was kind of like that young, pillager. I felt like let's take as much as I can. It's really impressive. Look how cool I am that I can dive and pull all these things up. Look how long I can hold my breath. But getting a little bit of a check on, not everything is as sustainably done as you think it is. Well, California, I think, largely was until they closed the abalone fishery. I think I got that lesson young and was able to kind of apply that later to how I felt about something. But more than anything, it was just like a cultural thing. It was like a family thing. Like, what do you do? Well, I dive with my dad and my sister. I think this is like what we do every year. So, to bring it up to 2017 when they canceled the fishery, I mean, the loss we all felt was tremendous. And not to say they made the wrong decision. I think fishery managers have an incredibly difficult job. But it's just like the sense of, oh man, that's like a loss of tradition, the loss of togetherness that we feel when we do this and camp out and cook these things and eat this stuff. And yeah, it's heavy. It's amazing how it's just down, culture is just downstream of the landscape and biology that you interact with.
Well, it's interesting. You kind of lose a little bit of your culture. It may be your family's culture, but it's a culture nonetheless. You lose it, and it's tough to like. That's the thing that scares me about the whole thing. It's like, okay, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, if we get rid of it, is that really going to fix the problem? Like, they wanted to shut down the kelp in front, like in my house here, the whole kelp thing because they want to shut the kelp out because of the kelp. They want to preserve the kelp. But I was like, is that going to fix the problem? Not having people spearfish there or just fishing? I don't know, but I do think kind of what you were talking about, which is I think is interesting, going back to like yin and yang. Like when you're young, you're shooting everything with this naive kind of sense of it doesn't mean anything much. Because I think even when you're young, you have this sense of mortality yourself. That's why my dad used to say young people go to war, because you get older, it's like it's a lot. I guess it's different now, but and then you get educated, and it's like the other side. You're like, well, hold on, like but the fact that you've seen both spectrums, and then when you get the experience part of it, it's like you end up in the middle. And so I always respect and a lot of the people I know that had those conversations with the ship, they were younger and they hadn't been exposed to it. So they've only got exposed to one side. Just go to the other side a little bit, and then like let's all meet in the middle, because people say, and I don't necessarily think this is entirely true, but two things can be true at the same time. I think there's a portion of two things that can be true at the same time, maybe not all the things, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think the thing is our cultures. I mean, I always joke around, we're white. We don't really have a culture, I guess. It's called Anglo-Saxon society. Well, like a little bit of the culture we do have, like families have cultures, families have like things. It's like we should consider that. Now, that doesn't mean we just do whatever we want to do. But if it's really going to improve the program, if it's really an issue, 100%, but that should be somewhat of a little bit of factor, because if we were Native American, that would be a major factor. That now, and it should be, but you're right. It's interesting. I wonder, what me as a non-educated science person, what are the parameters that they're doing to say, yes, we can open it back up? Because I always hear like parameters to close things, but I'm always like, okay, how are we going to get it to where we can open it back up safely? and manage it?
That's a really good question because it's species dependent a lot of the time. I mean, the short answer is like, well, are there more? Yes. Are they repopulating? I don't. I used to know a lot more about abalone biology back from undergrad because I studied them like crazy. Kind of moved on to other fish, or other species, but I don't. There's a couple things. So like a lot of the abalone issue, a lot of that had to do with I think there was an increase in water temperature. Boy, and they can pillage me in the comments if they want. But my understanding was that there was a bacteria that I was actually getting lodged into the esophagus or the mouth of the abalone, which prevented it from eating the way it needed to. So I think correspondingly the foot was shrinking and then it was
Okay.
falling off. That's my understanding of what was happening. I think there was a wasting disease that happened with the abalone. Um,
I do
so
know that there's domoic acid here, which is occurring, they were saying, because of either my coworker is a master's of conservation forensics or something, but
Mm.
she studies this anyways more than I do. So,
Yeah.
but she was saying like, yeah, that's a similar situation where you have this ripple effect of the either pollution or there's and there's a type of bacteria that is blooming because of the pollution or something like that. It's more prevalent. And then that chain reflects down all the way down to now bigger mammals are suffering and it's just a bigger
Mhm.
deal.
Yeah, I mean anything that filter feeds probably gets eaten by something else, and then everything just kind of moves up the trophic levels. So you have this thing, bioaccumulation, right, which is just the
Right.
accumulation up. But then you have this thing called biomagnification, which is the larger the animal, they're eating many large numbers of these smaller animals, so it actually magnifies in terms of the concentration as you move up. So I think like whales, I think are a good example of it because they tend to concentrate a lot of stuff because they're eating tons and tons and tons of biomass. So yeah, I mean that's an issue. So in terms of how they might assess how abalone are doing, like I'd love to, the term recruitment would be used a lot. Like how many young ones are they seeing recruited, being stable? Are they taking back the baron from the urchins? Um, and then you might want to look at population health overall. Like, are they recruiting? Are there more? But are they looking pretty sad? I guess those are
Right.
the two things I would think of. But then you're also going to want to look at like water temperature. I think, or the extent to which maybe a population's become resistant to this wasting disease. And I don't have an answer for that. I think some recent, I was reading a paper a little while ago, and I think there was something about a population of black abalone further south that had shown some kind of resistance. But man, I don't want to get over my skis too much. I'm trying to
Yeah.
hedge. If I don't have Google Scholar up in front of me, I'm like, oh no, I would second guess myself. But I guess that would be how my framing for how they would do it. But so it's slated, I think, to open this next year. And I would be all for it if they make that determination. I think they gave it it's been it'll be almost a decade at that point in time. So, let's hope they bounce back. I would like to think, it was just, I wish it were something as simple as fishing pressure. Like we took too many of them. But I think when you really get into, the impacts, that we're seeing with climate change in the ocean, like you're going to start seeing things that happen that are a little bit unpredictable. I mean, the sea star wasting disease that we had a couple of years ago that just wiped everything out, with the sunflower stars, is an example of these changes we can't quite predict because the ocean's so darn unpredictable as things are in flux. So yeah, it's a lot to stay on top of.
Yeah, and the other thing to it too, like for me personally, I'm always like, um, is this all part of a pattern? Because like we've only been keeping track of things for like, I don't know, since the 50s, maybe longer, but like really like our science has evolved so much more. And we're saying as if we've seen this stuff for the first time. Maybe we have, but maybe this is just part of the whole thing. And the reason why, as stupid as it sounds, but I remember when I moved to San Diego, like in 2000, maybe, yeah, it was like 2000. The water was 52 degrees, and I remember moving down here and surfing one day. It was so cold, and I was like, man, I got a 4.3. So when I moved down here, I got a 4.3, and then it was never that cold for till last year, last spring.
Whoa.
I was diving last spring, and it was 52 degrees on the surface. And I thought that for like, I started to think for years that I was just like wrong, right? And my mind blew it up or whatever. Like, back then I didn't really have like, I think I got my temp from like something else. I don't know. But I was like, oh, maybe I was just wrong because it's been in the 60s, it's 50, high 50. It's never been that cold in some years. And then last year it got down to 51, 2 again. And I was diving. Even the fish looked cold. It was hilarious. Like, I was like, dude, it is freezing. I was like, okay, so I'm not insane. Wait a second. Maybe everything is kind of cyclical. What is that cycle? Is it 50 years? Is it 20 years? But like we've got that, like that happened, now it's gone, and it came back. I'm like, okay, so it is possible. So it's all funny, but I just try to figure all this stuff out because I'm just curious to see like how, like, maybe something died over here, but then maybe something did really well over here. Maybe we're getting it ebbing and flowing. And it's hard because we haven't really been keeping track of it for that long. Like,
I'd be really, yeah, and it's so funny that I don't have a full answer, but I'd be really interested to know, like about if those were El Nino or La Nina years that you were
yeah,
talking about, because what happened, in that instance, I would be curious to know which way the wind was blowing, because if they blow warm surface water back, so then you had that seasonal upwelling where the cold water comes and like really stays for a little bit longer on the coast. But you're right. It could just be something we're cycling through, or it could be something that we're seeing where the wind patterns change, and you see, El Nino years and La Nina years become a little less predictable. I'm not I definitely steer clear of
no,
climate
you're
science
good.
to the extent I can, because
Yeah, no, no, no.
I
I
have
just think it's
friends who are.
interesting.
It's so no, it's super interesting, but it's like you said, you're kind of a practitioner, right? You're on the ground seeing these changes. Um, you're the affected stakeholder in a sense that the scientist would want to try and explain this stuff to, because that temperature, like you said, the fish were cold, and I know you were joking, but who knows what water, that water temperature does impact the populations in some way. It can't not.
Well, I noticed
Yeah,
that when I say they were
yeah.
cold, I mean they literally were like moving. They were not moving fast. Everything around seemed like it was moving like a half a knot slower just
Mhm.
around. So I say it jokingly, but I legitimately mean like the fish just seemed a little more catatonic
Mhm.
than usual. I mean, I was just like, God damn, it's cold. Excuse me, but
Well,
it's like freezing.
yeah,
Um,
well, it could have been real chilled out. I mean,
yeah,
the flip side example is a couple years ago you had what's called the blob, which was this
right.
ocean heating event, right? And that caused all the crabs' metabolism to speed up too quickly because it got too warm, and then they just starved to death.
Yeah,
So there's
crazy.
it's hard to, I don't want to make it's not exact opposite of that, but like the thermal changes in thermal ranges, like in ocean temperature, are hugely important. And I like that we're monitoring it. I like that, I wish I had a Spiro. If a Spiro, every time they went out, sent somebody the temperature, like that would be such a cool way to collect information, on,
Yeah.
how things are, because there's always someone going out. But anyway,
Yeah, and it
yeah,
depends too on, like you said, updwellings with the wind and all of that. Where you are, is there a canyon? Is
right.
it like, yeah, so all that. But um, yeah. So when you, I went to your website and I was reading about it, and I saw like your motivation for the whole with your item was
Mhm.
you and your dad were hiking or something, he fell off the cliff. That is not the first time I've heard that from my friend. Had a reconstructed shoulder
Oh,
surgery because he fell off Sunset Cliffs climbing up it
oh,
with his stuff. So yeah, I read that. I was like, oh yeah, I understand that. Like I've heard about that.
man. I mean, I'm sorry for your friend, but I'm kind of happy we got another case study, in a way.
He's fine now. He's good. But yeah,
Yeah. But thanks for teeing that off. Yeah, it was just one of those, like when you get finicky, and the longer you're in a sport and doing it, you kind of just like, okay, there's the purpose built gear could be better. And it's not to throw any existing gear under the bus. I think there's everything has their price point and has their place in the industry. Like I own plenty of other spearfishing bags, mostly because I've been tearing them apart, retesting them, and trying to figure out what could be modified. But yeah, it was just one of those things where, inspired by, California specifically, where I grew up, my dad, he would drive along, the parts of Highway 1, some parts that have a guardrail, some that don't. He'd just be like, do you see a spot? Do you see a spot? Are we in an MPA? No. Okay, let's go. And the not being in an MPA would be a bigger determination of where we're going to try diving than if it was easy to get to. Uh, and I love that spirit of it. And I just figured, all right, man, I would love to prevent that. The issues with your center of gravity or the issues with not having a hands-free load to carry was kind of the inspiration for that. And then, moving on as I got older in life, I realized, other people don't necessarily have spearfishing as their primary hobby. Case in point, my wife, but she does love backpacking. And we do all these backpacking trips and always stumble on some body of water and be like, man, I wonder what's in there. I'd love to go check that out. So, at some point she's just said, all right, just make the backpack, make something that will kind of make it all work. So it became kind of load management and then long distance walking, hiking, and traveling with a bag. And that's kind of where the backpack we came up with was born from, just it not quite doing what I wanted it to for me specifically, and thinking. And then finally, the feedback's been, yes, there are other people who were kind of in the same boat in terms of wanting something that was a lot more, I guess, Spiro considering, or more considerate of, like, a full on kind of like heavy duty high end pack for Spiros and free divers. And that's kind of where it came from after much trial and error.
Yeah, because it's like if you don't have a boat, there's so much coastline that you're gonna have to hike to. Um, Otherwise, a boat's really your only option. And there's like, especially up there, even in Northern California, it seems wide open unless you have a boat, and that may not be a factor. Even in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest thing? Like, I saw that you guys, the way you have it configured, where your weight belt was at the bottom, the way it was like, I just was looking, I'm so meticulous about certain, like, my equipment. And I was like, okay, so I kind of had the attitude. I was like, sell me that this is going to be comfortable like a regular backpack. Like, sell me, like, how is this better, right? Like,
Right.
than the other ones. And first thing I noticed was the waist. It's basically set up like a hiking backpack, which is,
Fully integrated. Yeah.
yeah.
So the three things that we wanted to focus on was, one, the center of gravity, because they're necessarily long to accommodate long fins, the load management, and then also the durability. But the main thing, so to load management first, it was, when you're backpacking, you do want to keep the weight low on top of your hips. Like, by definition, the heaviest part of your gear is your weight belt. Especially me. I'm, heavier than I used to be, so I keep having to slide weights on the end of it. Anyway, so I was like, man, how do you keep it on your hips? And also, like, how do I keep it out of the bottom of my bag when I'm hiking, at least? Because I just don't, I want things more organized than that. I don't love that there's this weight sitting kind of stressing the bottom of the bag when I can avoid it. So the designer I was working with, bless this guy for dealing with me, we had this idea, like, let's just wear it on your hips like you would. And so what we did is we created these really strong, it's a product called Hypalon, just really intensely strong straps with buckles. And they're alpine buckles, so you can actually undo them with gloved or cold hands now. That integrate all the way in. And then when you buckle the front like a regular waist belt, it puts all of the load on top of your hips. So it kind of forces you to put your weight belt, the heaviest part of your gear, where it's supposed to be while you're hiking to a spot. And, I have dad back now, and I need all the help that my back can get, walking around to places. And then it keeps it outside of your body, or outside of your bag. Because when you are swinging back and forth, that belt no longer acts as this kind of like heavy thing that makes your center of gravity travel. It actually is on your hips. So it moves with you, as opposed to this kind of like thing that creates, not G-force, but like a lot of momentum when you're kind of moving it. So that was the first thing we thought of. And that was probably our biggest innovation, just wrapping it around the hips and then putting the weight there. And that, I mean, I'm exceptionally proud of that. And I think that was like a feather in our cap. And it also allowed, when you think about, the moment my dad fell, like that, just that would have kept him from falling because his load would have been placed properly.
For you personally, when you're hiking where you're at, I saw you have a smaller gun, obviously for hole hunting and stuff like that. But um, how tall is that backpack?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now it's at 38 inches.
okay.
So it's just over 3 feet. We're working right now to see if we can make a run of them that accommodates like extra long fins. I've had a couple people ask about that. Some people wear like 41-inch fins, which has a big fin. But right now it's at 38 inches. It's like our current model, our standard model that's been accommodating most of the long fins.
Where do the fins go? Do they go interior?
Yeah,
Right,
interior. So there's three main cavities. So kind of like the other spearfishing backpacks that you'll see, there's one major cavity that you would ideally put your fins and your wetsuit in, and then like rope and like a harvest bag and maybe your float, and that can all be accommodated there. And then when you open the front pocket, it's actually subdivided with mesh. So there's actually 6 pockets within the other front pocket, and that can be dry or it can be wet. It's all waterproof interior. And then up top, there's another additional pocket with 3 dividers in it. So it's kind of one of those things like I liked opening my bag and then seeing, all right, booty, fit, glove, stringer, knife, like everything goes in a spot. And then, for me, Vaseline to like seal my wetsuit. I'm sure you use it too.
Yeah, I got to
Just to have
turn that down. Yeah.
just to have everything located in a spot, and that way I think things aren't swinging around when you're moving it. I mean, I've taken it through the airport 4 or 5 times now, and that also helps stuff just not roll around constantly if you're traveling long distances. So just kind of committed spaces for each thing in the same size body cavity. In terms of volume that other bags have, if not actually a little bit bigger than most bags, while still folding up to the same size as the other bags on the market right now. So that
Cool. What would be like what would be like your longest hike with that bag? Like just thinking about that.
if you saw the video, we did a video on the website. I don't know if you watched it, but that was our demo hike was the longest one we did. That was probably 9 miles round trip. Okay, so this is silly. This is inside baseball, but like everything on my back, totally fine. My buddy who shot the whole thing, he runs this great video production company out of Sacramento. Brought his underwater camera, which was like a variable we didn't kind of like think about. And that is just in a suitcase. So we're doing the hike, 8 miles, back's fine, feels great. Our shoulders are giving out because we're carrying around 45 pounds of underwater housing for his camera. So that was a brutal day. But it was like so worth it. I think we got great shots, and the bag showed up. I mean, we were sliding around in the mud to get to that dive site. It rained on us, it hailed on us. The bag was fine. I looked way worse than the bag did at the end of the day. It was just, yeah. I mean, so that was the longest hike we've done. I've done a few other ones, just kind of like 2-3 miles in, just kind of getting around or seeing like if there's another, entrance down a beach, just trying to get, oh, here's the dive site everyone goes. Is there something slightly different in this bay or this estuary we can check out? And then the other helpful part is just traveling with it too. I mean, going through airports, hands-free, being able to put everything in a bag that, is stable, that, can go through TSA and then won't get put in like the oblong, part with baggage claim. It's been huge. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So when up there, when you're diving, like it's usually, I'm assuming it's misting, raining or whatever. Do you guys throw your clothes, like you hike in obviously in regular clothes, you throw them in a dry bag, or do you bring a dry bag, or just throw them in
that bag? I throw them in that bag
because it's dry still.
Yeah, it's well, the interior is waterproof, the outside's ballistic nylon, which I haven't seen water get through yet. So yeah, if I hike down to a site, yeah, I'll throw all my dry clothes in that bag, um, get in the water, throw the bag, in a tree or in the forest, and then go dive for a bit, and then come back out and switch out of it. But yeah, that's where I have it. I have a dry bag, like an additional dry bag I bring, which is just Dry Sack, the company.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, if people want to put their fish in a bag, we're considering like maybe doing like a drop shipping thing where they can have like a dedicated fish pocket for it. Uh, but we did add 2 D-rings, which for what I use it for is actually use it as a stringer holder. Because we reinforced the D-rings there. So I've been able to hang fairly decent number of fish off the back of it.
Are they directly on your back?
They're on the back, yeah.
I was wondering if the fish swing around and like spying you, or you know what I mean?
They haven't yet, but maybe I'm not catching big enough fish.
No, I was just thinking about it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, if I whip hard enough, I could see it happen.
I was seeing if you tripped and like fell and just like rolled on a fin. You're like, this sucks.
Yeah, that's a good critique. Yeah, I'll have to think of a long solution for that.
I think it's almost like, this is what I always find interesting, is you find other industries that have been doing something, like you said, hiking, backpack. I'm like, why are we reinventing the wheel? Just do that, but then just change. Like, give me a kill bag that someone would use to hunt elk or something, and they stuff something in that.
Right.
And then I'll just kind of take the two and make it complement it. Why reinvent the wheel and, work with it and tweak it and whatever. But
yeah, it was just from seeing the fact that, and I think it was after I got into hunting, I realized how much gear is tailor made for hunting, and not so much hunting, specific types of hunting. There's like elk gear and, whatever they do in Texas, shooting pigs from helicopters or something gear. Kidding. Sorry, I'm not trying to joke about Texas. I know I'm from Oregon. We're more
yeah. It sounds like fun though, but I don't know. I guess it's invasive. That's how I sleep at night, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just yeah. But it was just one to see. I thought why I would love to see this level of consideration for Spearos, like the real people who are really trying to get after it and hunt and expand their range a little bit too. I mean, Oregon has some great, very plentiful dive spots. But I'd also like to see us just see what else is out there. And same thing with, the California coastline. I'm not really terribly concerned about crowding right now. But we have gear that can hedge against that if it ever becomes an issue too. So it's like, just like being prepared for what's next, or, if, from a fisheries management standpoint, like if we ever want to start hitting different holes, if we're hammering, a certain area, and we start thinking like, oh, maybe we should try somewhere else. Like this can conceivably, lessen that. I mean, there's a lot of schools of thought in the fishery science there, but I like the idea that a tool can enable you to go a little bit further and more comfortably.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. That's something you bring up, and I don't want to get away from it, but I actually meant to talk to you about this a little bit, is that we talk about like spear fishermen and we are sustainable, we're selective, but I also think that we as spear fishermen need to understand that we are, from a military standpoint, where I look at it like we're snipers, we can make a big impact with a couple of key kills. Yeah. And that's the one thing I think we need to understand, as far as maybe like, when we do pull the trigger, like, are we taking out this breeding, this massive 70-year-old, like, I've caught massive lobster before for work or at work, I should say. I've caught massive lobster, all the time. And it's like, at some point, I've got a lot of pictures with a lot of them, and I've let them go, because it's like, do you understand exponentially, like, this thing is producing X amount of eggs. You want this thing to survive for so long. It's strong and durable. You want this thing to keep breeding. So, I know a lot of people talk about slot limits with fish, which I think is pretty much a good idea, in some places, but even on a reef, there's a reef locally we dive, and it's small and it's like a gold mine, but it's the same thing. Like, if we're going to pull the trigger on, like, we could do a drop I could shoot a fish from every drop, but it's like, I mean, it's a small reef and there's one big breeding sheep's head, and like, yeah, we could shoot it, But, yeah, so I think the biggest, I guess, is more of like, that's another thing I just wish, I guess it's more of a comment, just wish people understand, like, we do make up a small percentage of it, but we also have the ability to make a massive impact with our calculated trigger pulls on big fish and other things like that.
Oh, yeah. We can outkick our coverage, if we
Yeah.
need to, or we can outkick the fish's coverage in a lot of ways. I mean, it's funny. It's analogous to kind of the shark gear. It's like, yeah, that stat. It's like, well, more people get killed by refrigerators falling every year. Well, it's like, yeah, but most people aren't in the water in California.
Right. How many are
It's
exposed to
it's
refrigerator?
a it's a
Every
higher
single.
position.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think
it's
that getting stung by bees, it's like, well, everybody in America has been about a
right.
bee several times, maybe a day or maybe once a day at least.
Mhm.
Not everybody's having a run in with a, great white shark.
Right.
So
And like all fishing isn't the same. Like, yes, your fishers are, when they're successful, they're quite successful. But that's like why I like the idea of enforcing the culture around it, around underwater hunting. Cause, for me, my hobby horse, and I'm trying to read a little more information about this, but it's the idea of lingcod because they have a fairly long nesting season and males guard the nests. And so it's one of the things, I've heard people, them diving with it, like, yeah, man, I just shot this lingcod. He was just sitting there. He didn't move. I'm like, well, it's January. So he was, you probably just like took him off his nest and however many thousand of his kids just got eaten by a greenling because they're, waiting for him to hatch. And it's like, and there's no law against it in Oregon. And I'm not advocating that there be, because I think it's a fairly sustainable fishery, but there's these things like, okay, there's like legal, then there's sustainable, and then there's like a best practice. And I want to see everyone like orient towards the best practice as much as they can. Um,
yeah. Yeah. I
and
think the
it's
thing with the lingcod too,
Mhm.
I've gone lingcod hunting in Mexico recently. And you're right. Like I could have poked the thing with the spear and I shot two of them. And I kind of like from from a hunting perspective, I was kind of like, okay, well, I checked those boxes. I don't really need to do that again. Maybe let's go get some more scallops or something.
Mhm.
But it's like it's cool. It's a cool fish, but I guess that goes back to maybe next time I'll just like film them and like, yeah, I could shoot you if I want, but like it's not hard.
Mhm.
Like to me,
No.
it wasn't that hard once you find the hole. Just time, it's different. It was good visibility too, so that's huge. But it was just like I looked at this thing of like it's sitting on the rock, just sitting there. I was like, term, okay,
Oh, yeah. No, the biggest one I ever
no,
killed, was coming to check me out. You know,
right,
it's like, oh man, like you got to do what we like. Okay, fine. Like it's not.
yeah,
But it is. I mean, it's an amazing. It's one of my favorite. It's our logo. So like, it is a Lincoln and a cowboy hat. Like
yeah, solid,
the designer thought I was a little wild when I tried to describe it because I just sent him like a picture of a Lincoln I caught and was like, put a hat on this thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I appreciate that kind of, that as you mature, like you said, like the cultural enforcement of it, not necessarily waiting for regulations and laws to do it. Yeah, I want to see more people like that, and we do have a lot of people like that in Oregon. I think we have a good culture around it. But yeah, I would love to get back to California sometime too. I've been diving in California, or at least in Southern California, almost very rarely in my life. I'm not used to what
yeah,
warm water and clear viz looks like anymore.
yeah. I mean, and I saw that video of that white shark. The guy was diving up there, and I was like, oh, you got those too, huh? It's funny. You don't think about it when you're up. I do a lot of surfing, but it's like it's something I wouldn't think about up there. Just was cold,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
They're there. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it was a really cool video and I like the guy. Mixed feelings about it because I'm like, oh man, you just put that like front of mind, you know. And
yeah.
I've had an encounter before, back in California when I was, a couple years ago.
Of course you have. Well, I think you're
Yeah.
diving.
Right, exactly. So you're like, "Oh, man, like, it's cool, like, I'm alive." Most people are alive, but, I've you just have to be that one sometimes. So it's just something to put out of mind. I when I was getting my free dive certs, I mean, shark anxiety was, like, something I freely admit to, because I think
100%, me too.
it helps other people. I'm not everyone's, like, not like people who don't think about it. It's not like bravery. It's like more like, you're pretty bold if you are shark anxious and then still go in the water. Like and those are the kind of people I think you should like talk to, because they'll calmer and not as erratic in the water. And those are the people that tell you, how to move in a way that doesn't attract a lot of attention.
I think it's something to talk about because it's almost like you're embarrassed if you feel like that. But Jaws fucked me up from a kid. I'll be honest. And I was fascinated with sharks, fascinated with all that. So I watched every Shark Week, reading about all the attacks. So when I was probably up until I was 40, I would say. At 40, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna watch Shark Week or any of this stuff anymore because it really does like hearing the stories, it's there. And I know some of the places we dive, I know there's sharks there. I there's a sea lion rookery here. Like I know it. And so I remember I've said this just before. I'm gonna do two things. I'm either gonna stop diving because I'm stressed out every time I dive, like and for fucking 30, I don't know, 20 some years, right? Or I'm just gonna say, hey, it is what it is, and I'm gonna keep diving. And I'm like, I'm definitely not gonna stop diving. Like,
Yeah.
definitely not gonna stop diving. So fine. I just not gonna seek out seek out hearing about attacks and stuff like that because that's
Right.
always like but and I do have a rule when I dive a certain place here, the Coronados or whatever it is, if it's poor visibility, I'm not doing it. It's more of a, it's just not I'm just not, it's just not safe enough. I'm not,
Right.
some people can do it's fine. But for me, I'm like, if the visibility is like poor, it's not worth. I know there's sharks there. I have friends that we were getting ready to get in the water, like, hey, swim between the two of us. So I was like, why am I the only dude on this boat without a shark shield? You know? And the population's coming back and all of that. So it's like, hey, it's cool. It is what it is. I'm not going to stop diving, but like, I would never be, and somebody made fun of me. I was funny on Facebook. I said, yeah, I would like poop my pants or something, put my wetsuit if that thing came up to me. And I kind of, you know, or try to talk trash. And I was like, yeah, I'm afraid of something the size of my Toyota truck that could eat me. Yeah, I'm a coward. Sure, dude. Sure. I've done a lot of things in my life that like, I know I always say to the kids too, it's okay to be afraid. It's what you do when you're afraid, how you
Exactly.
handle it. And it's
Exactly.
all right. You still got to do a job. You still got to do this. And like, yeah. So I just think it's important to let people know, like, I envy the people that's not in their first part of the rain. But I gotta say, when I jump in, the pulse goes up. I'm checking it. I was like, okay, just give me a little second to acclimate. All right, cool. All right, let's go. Yeah. And I just don't take stupid risks. Or not stupid risks, just, you know, but yeah, okay, so tell me your shark
Yeah.
story. Speaking of not shark stories.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say. So the hardest drops the deepest. That was always the motto I guess by. It was we were abalone diving and it was back in 2017, so it was the last season actually. It was weird. Most people are into it kind of underwater at depth. I was a surface encounter. It was about 15 feet away, and I saw the fin surface, and then I saw the tail fin, and I was like, "Oh, whoa!" So it's it kind of comes towards them, and diverts away, and I yelled at my buddy who was pretty new to this. Like he was just new. He's coming out with me because we were really shallow, 15 feet of water. And I just yelled fin. I not even yelled shark. He yelled fin, and he just and he's from like inland Maine. Like I just threw this guy into like the worst situation. Great sport about it. And then he just books it, and then he was way faster at swimming than me, which sucked. So it's like, am I gonna be the guy who like signaled everyone and then also gets eaten? So we torched it, and then we just kind of, you have that moment where I think the guy in the video that recently had it too, where you just get to the shore and you're just laughing.
Oh,
Just,
right.
just the adrenaline of it
Yeah.
all. And it was like freaky to see it happen at the surface, the fin coming at you, again, like you said, we're kind of messed up from Jaws, like that iconic fin, it was
Yeah.
I did because I always thought if it happened, it'd be at depth and it'd be like, all those other videos you see where it's like this kind of grainy, shark going by you. But it was like this very clear as day, you know, coming through the water, like cutting through the water. And that was it. Like that wasn't, again, it wasn't, no one got attacked per se. No one got bumped, but it was enough to kind of freak me out. I think it was the combination of feeling responsible for my buddy, that really shook me up, I think, after a while, because, I knew what I was doing and I knew it was safe to take him where we were, but there's just that risk factor that you kind of, in him, being aware of it, but not, it was his first dive in that area, and then seeing that on your first time in that county, I guess it was up in Sonoma. I can say that.
Yeah, they're good.
The first time up in Sonoma, I'm just like, what do you do? Like, are you kidding me right now? So I don't think he's been in the water since.
Who would have thought? Sonoma.
Yeah. And then, we get out and the CDF and W guys there. And he's like, oh yeah, we found half a seal the other day. It's like, did you not think to mention that before we walked past you to get to the
Solid. The other part about that fascinates me is just understanding those animals and seeing the patterns. And like, I made an Excel spread. This is me.
Oh wow, this is dorky.
So, yeah, I love it because it's just fascinating. So that's the problem that leads me down this rabbit hole of like fascination and fear of getting attacked. Like, I think if it's good visibility, I have no problem. Like, if it was good visibility, swim by, cool. I see you see me, we're fine. That would be amazing. But I know, friend telling me a story about a dude coming up from a dive. There's a shelf at 50 feet that this one spot we dive at, and you could sit on the shelf. And then on the way up, he's coming up right when he gets to the surface, what's following up behind him. So he levels off and then the shark hits him. But the shark, he actually ended up like just getting launched out of the water because the shark kind of veered off. And so he ended up like on its back, like right by the boat. And so, like, that's terrifying. At the same time, you're like, oh, he didn't, he veered off or whatever it was. He missed, maybe, I don't know. But that's why I'm like, the good viz, I feel like if they really, if there's good viz, they're more inquisitive, like most sharks, most predators. That's not going to be necessarily an attack. It's going to be like, hey, what's up? Okay, cool. I'm leaving. Because I've seen them from my boat getting ready to jump on a patty. And it's like that back goes here and there. Like that is, I could walk on that fucking thing's back. And it's like, so it's interesting. But yeah, I charted out like that Great White Shark Tracker app, like charted out like, okay, this time of year during these months, they've been all the different sharks. And then like where the regions in Baja and Southern California, offshore or whatever. But like you can see February at this time, this particular shark always comes around Cabo and goes up the Sea of Cortez. At the same time, January, February, there's all these attacks on the mainland side, on the mainland side, right across from like La Paz over there. There's been 2 or 3 guys. One guy got his fucking head bit off.
Holy shit.
And it may not be right. It may not be that shark, but I'm saying there's a pattern of migration occurring. So they're
just at the mouth of the Sea of Cortez, right there.
Yeah,
like they did not way north. Okay.
Right, but up way north. So speaking from friends with eyewitnesses, we were diving and dude's like, hey, our ponga broke down. They came and helped us tow. Like we were just on, this spot and we saw a great white on the surface, same thing, kind of cruising, big one, like 17 feet. And I was like, okay, cool. That was in May. I know in June, my friend was diving the north side of this one island there. And he said the same thing, kind of similar to you. He's like, the biggest shark I've ever seen, just like, I don't know if it was a whale shark. He goes, I didn't see it. It looked like, there wasn't a whale shark. It's like tail was probably like 5 feet. I don't know, dude. It was massive. It like swam past him, kind of buzzed him, and then swam kind of towards his buddy. And he yelled out to his buddy, and the thing kind of just swam off. But that was in June. And then it's funny, like these are all these stories I've heard. And now you have this data that actually like backs the stories up, where like the data and the stories are matching up with the same time frame. Okay, when did the sharks leave the Sea of Cortez? Like if I wanted the safest time to dive the Sea of Cortez, when do they leave? There's one island in the Sea of Cortez, is like there's a couple. I mean, there's a lot of seals around where I'm like, if I wanted to dive that island, like when's the safest time for a Brett to dive that island, right? Like, and you just look at the data, you're like, man, this data, like, it's consistency. This one shark, and I could pull it up my phone because I put it in my notes. This one shark, within 2 weeks of it, popped up around the same location, getting ready to go around Baja within like 2 weeks. And it like that blew me away because it's a year, they're like a year and a half, like almost a year and a half staggered or 2 years staggered.
Mhm.
And they're going offshore doing their breeding stuff. And then he's like coming in and popping. It's like this pattern, right? And it's so, and I'm sure everybody notices this too, because I'm just happy to like do it for myself. I was like, like, this is so interesting to me. A, because it benefits me because I don't want to be where they are at the same time. And then part of you realizes that they're fucking everywhere. There is that. But they're just
Yeah.
subgroups, like certain sharks do certain areas.
Yeah, they have
Well,
like a pattern, you know. That's so man. Have you sent that to anyone doing? I mean, that's
well, no, it's just a shark
hardcore. Oh,
tracker
it's a shark
app.
tracker.
Yeah, but I
Wow,
just
dude.
plotted all the pings because I'm a loser, and my wife's like, "Wow, you can't remember to give me a Coke Zero at the fucking store, but like you do this, okay?"
Oh man, I
Uh,
mean, I use GIS a lot at work. I might have to do the same
yes,
thing. Okay.
yeah, I'll send you what I have. It's fine. Well, my kids laugh at me at this stuff, but this stuff is just like fascinating to me, so it's super interesting. Yeah, uh, this is great. Oh, here.
Very
Anyways,
cool.
yeah, so I just kind of plotted or just, made a little chart of everything and like where it's at certain times, the range of times. Um, Primarily because the other thing about that is people understand that like you understand fish migration, those sharks or certain migrations, sharks follow certain things. They're usually like a week or two behind or whatever. But like I know here that when the by the sea sailors show up, the mola mola show up. Then it seems like for some reason the mola mola show up, and then it's like thresher, or then it's like yellowtail, then threshers. I've seen this for like 2 years, like this pattern of like staggered like by a couple of weeks, and oh, okay, it must be going. Now we also have a big south swell that filled in,
Oh
bringing
no.
all the warm water up, and with that, like, or just bringing water up with south swell, bringing currents and all that stuff. Here come the fish too. So I know we just had our first south swell, so I'm like, I bet 2 weeks we'll start seeing a big push of like yellowtail or whatever it is. And maybe the temp will pop up a little bit, but this is all Brett's little theories and stuff. But there's
That's
some patterns, and so that's I think the thing about spearfishermen and scientists that are just like so similar. Maybe our motivations are different, but our pattern, like our thirst for knowledge and understanding wildlife is the same.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
I
that's I
mean,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
that's the great part about science. I mean, scientists in general. I mean, if they're just want to create knowledge, it's for us to do what we will with it, and that's kind of what I like about doing. About that kind of career. It's just like, yeah, yeah. It's more normative for spearfishermen. It's like, well, I want to know when they're going to be here or when the sharks are there, so I can avoid it. But it's cool. I mean, the more you read this, like none of this is an accident, right? There's a very specific, like, biological chemical process everything's following. Like the sharks aren't meandering. It's very much
right.
they got somewhere to be, and there's a reason for doing it. That's so cool, man. I love
Yeah, they're not going to
these
get
guys.
lucky, right? Because the problem with that is getting lucky is not meaning surviving. Like they have to do things efficiently and effectively, or they're just not going to survive. Like
Yeah,
as a
luck
whole.
doesn't live in the ocean. I don't think.
Right. Right. Anyways, I took up a lot of your time. I know
You're fine.
I put your daughter or your little is it a girl or a boy? Your
Yeah,
baby?
it's a little girl. It's a
A
little
little girl.
girl,
Yeah.
and yeah, to be I guess to let you know the continuity's happening. My wife caught me looking at like smallest wetsuit you can buy the other day on Google. Um, Turns out it would
Yeah.
be a couple of years before we get her in the water. But yeah, she just turned 8 months.
Oh, I understand. I have three. They're older, but yeah,
Okay.
I got one for three. One is like loves it. My oldest boy is like, yeah, sure, Dad, we'll go with you. I'm like, all right, cool, let's go. Like he'll like he likes to fish and stuff. He's just likes a good time, which is great. My youngest one is like the one that's like, let's go, Dad.
About it.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
all
cool. Yeah,
right,
my
cool.
dad
Yeah.
was 1 for 5, so it. just glad the more, more increase your chances. It's all good.
Yeah, they get mad at me when I shoot like mahi though, because they're pretty fish. My youngest, she's like, "Dad, you should have shot this fish. It's pretty." I'm like, "But it's also the fastest growing fish in the ocean. It's so sustainable. That's why." She's like, "Nah, well, it's really pretty, Dad. You should have shot it." I'm like, "Yeah, fair enough." Uh,
The,
yeah,
the data analysis will come later. I love it. That's
yeah,
awesome, man.
yeah. Well, is there anything else? I mean, because I know I kind of kind of brushed really quick over that bag, but like I had a question for you. I saw you're
Sure.
doing a what is it? Not a Is it a GoFundMe?
Yeah, it's a Kickstarter. So
Kickstarter. Yeah.
we've got about 24 days left on our Kickstarter right now. We have it set up as kind of if you want to do like a pre-order for the bag if you're interested in it. We're also doing like a wholesale purchasing thing if shops are interested as well, or if you just want to support new gear coming out and small kind of upstart companies for freediving, spearfishing. Like every little bit helps. So yeah, you can have a look. It's just Kickstarter.com. The backpack is called the Cabazon 1. It is a play on words because one, it's a great game fish, or I guess the sculpins would be the other term you guys use for them. And that also means pig-headed and stubborn in Spanish, which is something my family would apply to me. Um, so that's the Cabazon 1 backpack. If you go to Kickstarter and search that, it'll come up. If you search spearfishing on Kickstarter, it is, I have found out, the only spearfishing and freediving item on Kickstarter right now. It was that, and then like something Shrek had from his it was like not a recipe book, like the 99 tips to get better.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are like the only two attempts at that. So, I mean, as much support as we can get from the community, we'd love it. We're not done designing either. This is the first run of the backpack. We're going to improve on it. We're going to keep getting industry feedback. It's kind of like I had to cap the feedback after like the certain amount, and then we'll just do something else down the road. But we have other gear we're working on and designing. We're also, doing some partnerships with some of the adventure travel companies up here in the Pacific Northwest. We're not doing I'm not doing freediving certs, but I'm just trying to get people comfortable kind of floating around in the water. So just a lot of, collaboration, just kind of try to build the culture around kind of coastal foraging and, ocean conservation, and just build that community in a way that's not reckless. But it all starts with our backpack and not falling down cliffs.
Could you use it? I mean, obviously you probably could, but like, would it work pretty good for hand line fishing or just rod and reel fishing?
Oh yeah, I mean one of the things we did was the side straps that you would hold a spear gun in. It's all buckled, so you can cinch down anything into that. So rod and reel fishing, it'd be great for. It could carry a bunch of tackle, carry a blanket. I've shoved a tent into it. Yeah, you can get a lot of stuff in it. It's a multi-purpose bag. I'm branding it for freediving and spearfishing because I want the community to feel like it was something for them specifically. But it's very much an all-purpose bag. Like beach toys. I mean, I carry diapers in it definitely. So it's whatever you want to do with it, it's up to you. But the spirit of it is for the freedivers. But everyone's got a much broader life than just their spearfishing too. So use the bag for whatever you want.
Solid. So where would you find what's your website?
Sure, it's at oceancowboyoutfitters.com. And then that actually links directly to our Kickstarter right now. And then we have social media. I'm not the greatest at it. I'm learning, but it'd be at Ocean Cowboy Outfitters on Instagram right now. And I know I don't have the world's largest presence, so I'm still learning to put myself out there a little bit more.
There's a learning curve. Yeah, there's a learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's we're getting there. We got a lot of support. All the feedback's been great. Even people who have suggestions have been fantastic, and we really appreciate it. And I'm just thrilled by how positive the community's been. And I really think we brought an innovative piece of gear that will help people out and expand their range a little bit. So that's what we're hoping for.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You got a newborn, or I'm sorry, was it 6 months? 8 months.
8 months.
8 months.
So she's just biting everything at this point in time. But so,
Yeah, it's your
all
one
good.
everywhere teething.
Yeah, I was trying to do CO2 tables the other day, and then she started to teeth on my hand in like the middle of a hold, and it was like, oh, this is an added challenge.
It's actually really good training, probably.
Yeah, if I ever run into a triggerfish, it's like, oh, I'm training for this. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And if you ever want to go down more rabbit holes about anything else, love to talk again at any point.
Yeah, no, that's all. I talk too much, clearly. That's why I started a podcast, I guess. So, well, I appreciate your time, Kellen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. And yeah, looking forward to seeing how this sounds when I have to listen to my own voice.